Hello, welcome back. Time for some more Talking C# on our Objects Talking to Object series. The last video that I made was looking at method passing of an object to one object to have a relationship with another object. Today I'd like to look at event handling, and we'll look at how that works. So if you open up your internet developer environment of choice, in my case Visual Studio, and open up a console application, let's begin. Once your console application is open, we'd like to get straight into building our light class again. Similar to what we've done before, but let's just talk our way through it. Firstly, we'll create the class design of a light, which we have a status of on and off, true and false. Let's build the class. Let's add the constructor in. This is the constructor here. Now we'll add our Boolean state, so the light can be on or it can be off, true or false. And regardless of defaults, when we construct this object, what we give it as an instruction in the constructor class is we're going to make the state of the light as false, as in off. Next off, let's put our getters and setters in for the property so that we can tell the light to be in a state of on or off, and we can also get that state to see what it currently is. Let's write that code next. Here's the bit where we can say, let's get the status of the light. And then here's the command where we can set what that light is. We can say, I want you to be true, I want you to be false. The next step that I'd like to do is to copy and paste the light design so that we can rename it and call it a switch, because at the moment the functionality will be the same for both of them. This will save some time. So we change the class name to switch, and we also match that with the constructor method. Now we have a light and a switch. Okay, now I want to change the switch so that it has an event handler. So let's type one in. We've made a decision already that switch is going to be the object that broadcasts what it's doing, and the light is going to be the observer of that event. We've decided one has to say to the other one which one goes first. We're saying the switch will say to the light first, I have changed my status, I have switched from on to off. I would like you to observe that, and we'll follow through with the code. So here we have it, where we're changing the state in our setter. We're going to also trigger a method, because we've got to get that broadcast out to another object, not within this one. So we will then trigger onValueChanged, and the program will go and seek that method and do something about it. So what I first want to do is to just write an empty onValueChange method so that we know that it's there. This will happen every time the switch changes its status. So the next step, once we've changed our state and called the method, is, because our object has an event handler, is to test that object for changes. And this is what we do here. Where we have our on value changed, we test our event handler to see if there's changes. And what we're saying here is if there has been some changes, which there will have done because we called the method, we can then trigger this event. This is essentially broadcasting that something has happened, it's signaling, and those that are listening, which we will do the associative code shortly, will be able to hear and react to what's going on. So value changed, that's our event handler. We're sending this object, and you can supply arguments, but we're just going to leave this blank for now. It's not necessary. And then next we're going to move to the light, and we're going to pick up this broadcast and we are going to react to it. And I'll show you how. So now we have an object, the switch, which is now broadcasting what's going on, an event. We need a capacity to listen to that event, and this is what we're going to demonstrate now in the light area of the code. I'll show you how it links together. Firstly, I want to get rid of the light changing its own status. I don't want it to be able to independently switch itself on and off. I'm going to force it down my route of code where it is going to duplicate the reactions at the switch. Switch is on, light's on, and vice versa. So here's the step where we're going to use in the constructor our coupling to the switch. This sets up the relationship. I am listening. So here we brought in our switch as an argument to the constructor. Can't have a light without a switch anymore. And when it's changed, which is s.valueChange, that's our event handler, we're going to say you have to run to this code, value has changed. So switch changes, it triggers the method in this object, value has changed. So we need to go and write this object out next because it doesn't know what it is yet. And here's what we're doing next. The switch changes, I call the method in the light, and then the light has to say, the switch has changed, what am I going to do about it? If you left it empty, nothing would happen. But that would spoil the idea, wouldn't it, of what we're trying to do. So here's that method now, it gets called. So now that we have that method and it gets called, let's state what we want to happen. This is technically an observer pattern detail because one is listening to the other. I'll do a more integrated one with lots of things listening to one object, a one-to-many ratio, but this is the same step essentially. So it's a method. I've been called because the control switch has changed its status. What am I going to do about it? And so here's our reaction. Value has changed. What are we going to do? What we want it to do is we want it to match the state of the switch. So if the switch changes and they're the same to begin with, we need the light to change. So that's what this code is now going to depict. Remember, we're hearing this bit of the code because the switch has changed. It's told us. So we need to flip the status. If we were true, we need to change to false. Okay, so now I think we're ready to go. Let's go back up to the main area of our program. And let's make these objects now we've finished the designs. So the light and the switch is our study of how objects talk to each other. Switch design, called S, is our newly constructed switch. Next we'll make the light. So light design, we're going to call it L, and we'll have a new light through its constructor. Now it's red underlined for a purpose. It's not happy, it's missing some arguments. What is that? Well, we forced it to have a relationship to the switch. It can't be independent anymore. So what we're depicting here is that we need to provide a switch argument. So let's give it the switch, see if it's happy, and the red line disappears. It will construct. And let's just take some readouts of what's going on before we start to venture further into the code. So this will just take a little peek at what our switch status is. If you remember, when we constructed them, we decided to put in the constructors a defaulting these to false to begin with, and they're built. So I would expect it to say switch status false and light status false, both off, both the same state. And we'll add our little console.read key so that the screen stays on for us and we can see what our outcomes are. Now we've tested our defaults, let's try and change the switch around a few times and see what happens. Have we got our desired result? Remember, we're only changing the switch, and the event handler manages the change in state for the light. Light is not changing itself, it's been forced upon. So we copy the code and paste it, and we change the light switch to on, and as before, false false. Then the next bit of code, now it's showing true true. And just for completeness, we'll change that round again. Let's switch the switch off. We're only causing actions on the switch directly, the object, but the light is changing, so our relationship holds. There is definitely a relationship between the two. And here it is, false false, true true, and false false. That is our demonstration of an event handler. And it is also a pattern as well, because we could have more things listening to that broadcast, more lights, more anything. It's a one-to-many relationship. The switch knows it has an event, it knows that it's broadcasting, but maybe the analogy is this: if there was a notice board and you write something on the notice board and walk away, people can come and see that notice board, but you have no idea who is seeing your broadcasts. And that's kind of the relationship that the observer pattern is. So I'd like to thank you for watching part one of my event handler observer pattern tutorial here. Where we've got the light and the switch, the way we've coded it is a very command relationship, and that's because of the way we've written the code. I'm going to do a part 2, and what we're going to say in that situation is, yes, there's a relationship. Yes, I know there's a broadcast there. I know the switch has done his thing. I know he's turned on. But you could have a casual relationship. I don't have to copy switch necessarily. Maybe I only work between certain hours and I only respond in different scenarios. So I wanted to show that relationship. This tutorial is about a firm relationship, and the second part just gives you an indication of how a more casually, loosely coupled object might work together. I hope you tune in. Please subscribe and comment, etc. Like the videos, and I'll enjoy doing the next one. Thank you.